having a curious mindset and an intellectual curiosity about AI is really important, and an ethical curiosity about AI is really important. First and foremost, you gotta be using it. As a leader in the organization, you need to get out there, roll up your sleeves, and start experiencing this yourself and read voraciously, listening to podcasts, learn as much as you can, and be open, but also come at it with caution to make sure that you're protecting the organization, of course.
Why do so many digital transformations fail? And what can leaders do to ensure success? Welcome to the Care to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Corsetti, and today we're diving into one of the most transformative topics of our time, digital transformation. Joining us is Regina Manfredi, the Executive Vice President and General Manager of Crayon US. Regina is a powerhouse in the technology industry with over 2 decades of experience driving innovation with scalable data platforms, artificial intelligence, and cloud technology. Regina, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cynthia. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate it.
So let's jump right in. In your recent interview with Authority Magazine, you talked about how digital transformation is not just about technology, but also about culture and mindset. Do you want to dive into that a little with us right now and talk about how you embrace this effectively?
Sure. I think it's important for all of us who are leaders in commerce today to understand that every organization needs to begin to transform and become a tech-first company. And as such, you've got to leverage everything that's occurring in the marketplace around AI, security, as well as cloud. And so it's about not just the technology, but if you think about our employees, our customers, our buyers, and those that we engage with and interact with on a daily basis, it's a real big shift in behavior. And so it's going to require a different mindset, a lot of curious learning for people, change management and adoption, and a heck of a lot of adaptability.
You talk a lot in your article about your past and your father and your grandfather and how they influenced you. So let's unpack that a little bit and how that's influenced your leadership today.
I have to say that I am one of the most fortunate gals on the planet, I feel like, because I was raised by a family who were very hardworking, but who also had absolutely no limiting beliefs and really instilled that in me. And my grandfather was very successful, as was my dad from an education perspective. He was an educator. And they taught me very early on that there was nothing I couldn't do. And they were highly encouraging and really were there for me in all facets and showed me opportunities that I think a lot of fathers and mothers encourage their sons to do, that they pushed me constantly in that direction. And so I grew up thinking that there were equally as many female leaders as there were male leaders in the world. And I didn't have any bias one way or the other. So I just continued to lean in and enjoy what I did and do everything I could to do the best job that I could do at anything I set my mind to. And that was really what they instilled in me. And I'm lucky and I'm fortunate. And I feel like today in business, we need a lot of male allies who not only are working side by side with us, but thoughtful about how they're raising their daughters, because I think that's a huge difference maker.
Oh, that's huge. I really like what you said. How do you then take that background and as a leader, okay, you're leading men, you're leading women, and you're leading people that are coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, many of whom didn't have that benefit and who are coming with a lot of limiting beliefs and a lot of fears. So tell me how as a leader, and forgive me, I'm going to dive into this leadership thing because obviously I'm a leadership coach. So I want to know how you instill some of that value and that confidence and self-awareness into the people that you lead.
I think there are traditional ways of approaching it, but I think it's making sure that we're working together to be sure that as we are leading, we're looking for opportunities to sponsor people. There's oftentimes ways in which we can mentor others. And a lot of people are saying, oh, will you mentor me? And I said, how about if I sponsor you? How can we spotlight the good work or the great work that you're delivering in your company today or in this company today? And asking for a sponsor, I think, is a really critical need within business because there's a lot of DEI initiatives. There are a lot of mentorship programs out there. But if they don't have them, I think it's important for people to lean in and say, hey, will you sponsor me? Will you tell others across the company about the work that we're doing if they get a kudo or a prop? And I think that that's something that can be incredibly helpful for making sure that those with the diverse ideas or the diverse backgrounds, et cetera, can be spotlighted and within an organization.
So I think that's kind of interesting. A lot of times the words mentor, sponsor, and even coach, people, I often hear as a coach who I'm a purist and the difference between coaching and consulting, coaching and mentoring, coaching and sponsoring. In your words, can you break down what you see as the differences in those words of coaching, mentoring, and sponsoring?
Well, coaching is really sitting on the sidelines and then giving that constructive feedback to an individual. And it's a feedback loop, I think, from my experience. Mentorship is really about, I kind of put it, I don't know if it's fair to say it's almost like being the psychologist because you're just supposed to ask a lot of leading questions to help them come to their conclusions and guide them in that path, in my experience. And a sponsorship is someone who really makes a concerted effort to help others across an organization be aware of the talents, the skills, the capabilities, the good work that someone has performed within an organization and make others aware of what their capabilities are, of what their skills are, of what opportunities there might be for them to participate from a cross-functional perspective in different initiatives. And so they are different. I think that I could use a little class perhaps on the difference between a coach and a mentor too.
Well, actually, since you say that, I would kind of like to add some clarity there because as a coach, again, it's an unregulated field. So everyone says, well, I coach them through that and I coach them through that. And it's supporting someone through something and guiding them. So I look at it as a mentorship is someone who has experience within your organization or your industry and has gotten to the top and can give you the tips and pointers you need to navigate your industry or your organization in a way that someone outside of your organization cannot do. I think that the way you describe sponsorship is exactly correct. I think that the coaching, though, when you talked about mentorship, you said it's asking more leading questions. Coaching is where the questioning comes in. I refrain from saying leading questions because a coach, a good coach, if you imagine yourself walking down the path of your career, right? You're going down the path, and a coach, a good coach, is walking that path right alongside you. And their job is to say, hey, did you look under that rock? And just lift that rock for you and shine a light and help you see things from a different perspective and see yourself from the highest perspective that you can and make decisions from different angles that you might not have made otherwise. So I always encourage my coaching clients to have a mentor within the organization, have a sponsor within the industry, and use your coach as your partner. That the coach is that person who has no agenda. Mm-hmm. Internally, no matter how well intended, they have an agenda. It's for that company. If they're an HR person, if they're a CEO, they want the company to be successful. In addition, they want you to be successful. But there's always this unspoken agenda that we're moving forward for a certain reason. So that's where leading questions come in, because I need you to get from point A to point B because of my role in this organization as well. And for my success is your success and so on. Where a coach, all I care about in a coaching session, only thing I care about is you and your best and your moving forward. So it's nice that we get a chance sometimes to have these discussions, because these words are just thrown around all the time, and people do get confused on which is which.
Yeah, I love the distinction, and I appreciate you sharing that with me, because you've given me some things to think about as it relates to the intent, right? What is the intention and what is the outcome that you're looking for together in that communication? So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was an executive VP, I was in HR, and in coaching at that time, I did a lot of coaching, but I did it internally. And no matter what, as an executive VP of HR, even when I'm coaching a person, I'm coaching them with all this added knowledge in my head, what the executive team has been saying about this employee, what the plan is, where they fit in the succession plan, and how they're going to be pushed forward or not in that organization. So even unintentionally, I could be coaching them in the direction I really want them to go, because I want them to succeed. Where without all that information, all I can do is ask clarifying questions and help you keep seeing yourself differently to be your best.
I'm putting you at the top of my list to call when we revamp our coaching and mentoring program at Crayon. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's very different. So let's talk about Crayon a little bit. Tell me about your organization and where it came from and how you ended up in the CEO role.
Well, Crayon started 23 years ago in Oslo, Norway, and they really were focused on helping customers navigate the Microsoft ecosystem and the Microsoft product line, if you will, with the intent to help customers really make the best commercial and technical decisions for their organization. And so the mantra of we sit on the same side of the customer always is still true. Now, we're not just a Microsoft partner any longer. We support numerous hyperscalers and enterprise software companies out in the entire world. We're about 47 countries today and several $billion. And so the U.S. entity is just now celebrating its 10th anniversary. So we're excited. Our whole team's coming together to celebrate that here in 2 weeks.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And I came to Crayon because I just really believe in that customer first mindset and doing what's right for the customer and helping them solve complex problems as it relates to their digital transformation, their cloud journey, and now AI. So it's been an exciting ride. And I'm thrilled to be here.
That's awesome. One of the things that I've been saying to leaders over the last 2 years at least is that leadership today, and I want you to tell me if you agree with this, in the past, for years and years, as we've been coaching leaders and working with leaders, we've always said that it's an imperative skill for a leader to know how to navigate change and bring organizations through change. That's a really critical, imperative skill for leaders. But today, change is like on steroids. Mm-hmm. So I am of the opinion, and the way I work with my executives is that it's a different skill set. And when you have to learn now is not just to navigate a team through change, but you have to be able to keep them on board through change when you get halfway through and the technology changes and the goal changes in the middle of this fast push to where you were going. So it's constantly stopping and pivoting. And that is harder than navigating change the way it used to be. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'll be interested in what your thoughts are on this. I've been telling the team now since COVID that adaptability is now more important to the human race than your EQ or your IQ. How adaptable you are in a post-COVID era, right? Like none of us ever imagined something like that happening in our lifetime. And we had to adapt as a society and as a world. And as humans, with the innovation of AI and the rapid transformation that's occurring in our market, geopolitical environments, et cetera, I strongly believe that adaptability is the most critical trait now for someone to be successful in life and in business. And so that's really my position on that. And I think that fortunately, I'm one of those strange people who likes a lot of change. So it's easy for me, but it's not for everyone.
Right.
And so how do we lean in and lead through it? And I think that change management and tech adoption and those topics are so important today. And for those of us who can figure it out and who can lead through that change, I think it's really about over communicating primarily and being honest and authentic and transparent and being willing to say, okay, we took this direction and, got to pivot because something's happened that was outside of our span of control, but staying focused on what we can control and being open to what's out there.
When you're hiring new executives and new team members, how do you try to discern the adaptability of that candidate before making an offer?
We're still trying to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
In all transparency, we're still working through how to make that determination. And you can do all the behavior-based interview questions. You could have people take surveys about what they've done, et cetera. But it's really through getting very specific examples from that individual about how they've adapted in certain situations and getting the outcomes that came from it that help us kind of nail, okay, they can weather a storm.
Okay. So this just came to me. This is completely off the cuff and bizarre, but you know what I just thought of? It would be kind of a cool, and I've interviewed over 3,000 executives in my career. So, I mean, I've got a lot of interview experience. I wonder how cool it would be to have an interview scheduled with someone. And I'm talking a Zoom interview. I'm talking a face-to-face interview. And 30 minutes before the interview, you call the person and say, hey, we had a location change. We need you to meet us 45 minutes later over here. And just see how they respond to that. That could be like, I want to see how adaptable someone is. Do they flip out? Do they not show up? How do they adapt? And how do they show up when they get there?
Yeah, I wish I could remember where I read about that, but there was an article I read once upon a time that there's a CEO that actually uses a similar tactic in the interview process to see, will they answer the phone on a Saturday or will they respond to the email late at night and things along those lines? Or, oh, hey, last minute change on the interview process, et cetera. I'm not sure I agreed with everything, but it was an interesting note that he was really looking for resiliency and adaptability. And it wasn't about he expected people to work 24/7, but it was about how do they adapt and are they willing to adapt?
I can agree with you where I think sometimes those tactics can seem a little weird, but in a previous life, I went through flight attendant training. And it's funny, I have a master's degree, I have all this experience, and I will still say that one of the most difficult things I've ever done was flight attendant training, because all they do in flight attendant training is try to make you fail. Because in an emergency, you have to be not ready to fail. So you would be in this program where people were like the next day not there, or they would do something to set you up to fail. And you had to be adaptive. You had to think on your feet. You had to do all this stuff. And it was under so much stress and so much pressure that when you finish, you can handle an emergency. So I think I see it on both sides. Like in a realistic everyday business, is it really necessary to play games with people in an interview process? And if that adaptability is really a critical thing for your organization, think outside the box.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good example too, because you do have to pressure test in certain industries for sure.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think leaders should be balancing embracing AI while addressing some of the concerns and ethics and people's resistance to change? How do you balance all of this as a leader?
Well, it's tricky right now. It's more of a juggling act. It's not a balancing act.
Fair. I like that.
We're definitely all juggling. I believe that fostering and having a curious mindset and an intellectual curiosity about AI is really important. And an ethical curiosity about AI is really important. If you think about it, there are a lot of organizations out there that are really focused today on security and governance as it relates to implementing AI solutions in their organizations. But first and foremost, you got to be using it. If your teams are asking you for the capability, you've got to be doing your own homework and experiencing it yourself and how it can drive productivity for you and for your team. And will it generate the outcome or the ROI that you expect?
Uh-huh.
And I would really encourage, we encounter some customers and prospects today who the leadership is just very opposed to AI. They know it's there and they're curious, but there's a CISO involved who's very concerned about the security and the governance of that AI. There are business leaders who are looking to do things more quickly, drive productivity, drive efficiencies and economies of scale. And so as a leader in the organization, you need to get out there, roll up your sleeves and start experiencing this yourself and read voraciously, listening to podcasts. And like I said, that intellectual curiosity, learn as much as you can and be open, but also come at it with caution to make sure that you're protecting the organization, of course.
So that's interesting. In your learning about AI on your own and the podcasts and the reading that you've done, what is like one important tip or thing that you learned that stuck with you that you would want to share with our listeners?
I think that when you consider an AI solution and you are curious about that, start small and start in a limited capacity, prove it and develop it as you move forward. So we have implemented and created and generated our own AI solutions internally to help us. And we're seeing greater efficiencies in our legal department.
Uh-huh.
As a result, we're seeing greater efficiencies in our sales teams. As a result, we're seeing greater efficiencies in HR, but we're still figuring some of that out, quite frankly. But the executive leadership team became the primary users because if we were going to take the risk, we also wanted to make sure that the organization was going to be secure before we realized that reward.
Right. Yeah, and the security is things are changing so fast, and people are inadvertently maybe putting things in Chat GPT, not thinking about, is this secure? Is it not secure? Am I putting something in here that I shouldn't be putting in here? There's just so much. I was trying to do, my husband's a physician, and I was trying to do some, figuring out patients and who comes in, and I was trying to use Chat GPT, or it wasn't Chat GPT, I think it was Claude or something. I was using another AI. And as I went to enter stuff, I said, well, wait a minute. Like, there are patient names on here. That's a HIPAA violation. I can't do that. And so I obviously didn't do it. But inadvertently, I can see where you could do that. Like, I'm just trying to get this data condensed in this certain way, and people aren't thinking about it. So it is important for organizations to think that through, as you said.
Definitely. It's alarming to me to some degree, Cynthia, how many end users in corporate America raced to GPT, swiped their personal credit card to have access to GPT. And before many organizations realized what was happening, they were doing those searches on company assets and leveraging company data and information to help them move faster in their role, not realizing or recognizing the risk that they were putting the company in. And I still find that happens today in corporate America specifically. And I know there's a lot of organizations that try to prevent it, but it's very much an issue.
Yeah, it's funny. I work with organizations, and you'll be working with an executive, and they'll go, I have this plan, and this is what we're going to do. Of course, we have to go through the privacy officer, which is going to be like 5 no's and why we can't do it. But and I think you're right. It's a juggling, not necessarily a balancing.
True.
So I want to lighten things up a little bit and go into a lightning round, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions. I'd like you to come up with the first thing that comes to your mind. And we'll start with, what's your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
My dogs. There is nothing more calming and relaxing for me than spending some time with my puppies. That is the truth. They are the first people that greet me in the morning and the first one, the last ones at night. And one of them still thinks he should sleep with me. So they bring me a lot of joy.
That's awesome. Name one skill you wish you could master overnight.
I would say cybersecurity.
It's an important one. It's a good one. What's your go-to productivity hack?
Oh, I do leverage LLMs to help me be more proficient at work. Some of those are proprietary internal LLMs that we use and chat bots, if you will, that help support the work that we do. And with Microsoft Copilot and some others as well.
If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Looking right now at St. Lucia.
Ooh, perfect time of the year for that.
It's the perfect time of the year for that.
What's a motto or phrase you live by?
Adaptability is more important than your EQ or your IQ. I say that all the time. And I think the second one, since I've already used that one, I love Winston Churchill's "When you're in hell, keep moving."
I like that too. Okay, as my listeners already know, Care to Lead is my signature leadership system. It's built on 4 pillars, which is clarity, authenticity, responsibility, and engagement. I'd like to ask you, Regina, which of these pillars resonates most with you and how has it shaped your leadership journey?
Okay, I'm going to be really transparent. The one thing I'm still working on, in all sincerity, is the authenticity. As a female leader, and despite what my grandfather and father tried to teach me, the more responsibility you get, the more intimidating it can become. And the more you feel like you have to show up how people think you should show up. And so for me, sometimes I have to remind myself to just be honest with people. And what I mean by that is when I'm vulnerable. And allowing myself to be vulnerable and not afraid that makes me a weak leader or anything else. But I'm working on that personally.
I love that. I love that self-awareness. I love that authenticity and vulnerability and sharing that. So thank you. So Regina, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your experience with us.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to talking more.
To all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Care to Lead podcast. Remember, leaders who care to lead. I'll see you next time.